We are putting the web stream on right now, so you can take a seat. Once we have solved this small issue, we will start. Yeah, switch mode. Okay, we're online apparently, so welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dimitri Schuurman. I work for IMEC Living Labs, and I welcome you at the kickoff of OpenC Lab. So what is OpenC Lab? Is it a hackathon? Is it a bootcamp? Is it a competition? Well, it's all of that. So we're trying to do something new. We're combining marine and maritime open data, and we have created some kind of a competition around that. And today we will announce how this competition, how this bootcamp will work. And we have some elaborate speakers amongst us who will introduce you the basic themes of this framework. I will also suggest that you can join the conversation on Twitter. We have a hashtag OSL 2017. So please, if you have questions, suggestions, you can put those on Twitter. And I will check it in between and maybe give some answers on that. This is the program, so we're a little bit ahead of schedule or behind schedule, but we will catch up. We have a small toilet break at 17:25, but do not run because we're quite tight, and we will run until 18:50. when we will have drinks. And if you're at home, you can have a drink already right now. People here will have to wait until 7. So what is the process of today? Today we will start with some speakers from IMEC who will talk about open data, Pieter Kolpaert and Niels Walravens. Then we have people who will frame the challenge of EMODnet and who will give you some insights and pose some challenges to you, how you can solve them for EMODnet. And then we have testimonials from some entrepreneurs who have worked with open data and who have really created innovations based on this open data. So maybe you will be one of these entrepreneurs in a couple of years' time. Keywords of today are open data, digital innovation, entrepreneurship, and marine and maritime. So if these are the words that ring a bell for you, then you are at the right place and at the right spot at the moment. What is the process of Open Sea Lab? So today is the kickoff. The application, I'd like to introduce the first speaker to you. It's Pieter Kolpaert, who will give maybe a sneak preview of his PhD, who will be presenting next week. So thank you, Pieter, for making time for this. And the talk will be about open data. Pieter, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will in fact just do the introduction of my PhD, almost like my PhD thing, but will not get into the academics side. So first of all is, why do we want to get into open data? Why is this something we really need to invest time and money in? Well, we live in quite some challenging times, I think. And who of you know about the Kardashev scale? Is there someone who knows the Kardashev scale? No, maybe some people are laughing, so perhaps they know about it. But it's something from science fiction, where you create a classification of civilizations, and you try to classify them by how good they would be able to survive in extreme conditions. For instance, what would happen if your planet would have global warming or something like that? Would you be able to survive? And then the second stage is then whether you will be able to survive that your star dies out, and so on. It goes on. But today we are at phase 0. We would not, or it's very challenging whether we actually will go to the first level or not. And in all these kind of literature about the Kardashev scale, like one thing is really important, one sign is that you can see is really important, is a good communication medium, like a good channel where everyone can communicate with each other, where everyone can share knowledge and so on. If we have that, then we can actually live with more people on one small place. Just like ancient Rome, where also like a lot of people live together. Well, if you then see in the Middle Ages, like nobody all of a sudden was able to live together in like one city. Well, just because, well, we didn't have a good information system anymore, where people would just spread information around that wasn't available anymore. So open data is in fact saving the world. So, and if you don't believe that, I will tell you something else as motivation. Good. But open data, what is that? And I'm sure everyone already here worked with open data. Everyone visited already Wikipedia, yeah? Some of you will probably know about OpenStreetMap. It's like the Wikipedia, but for maps. Like you can add your own streets in there. You can play with it. You probably already have seen it on EMODnet. Everyone has already visited EMODnet, where it's used as a layer to show maps to people. That's actually OpenStreetMap is behind that. It's open data, and also Stack Overflow. The developers over here in the room will for sure know Stack Overflow. That's where they actually type their questions, and they see user-contributed answers to all their questions, developer questions. Well, that's also open data. It's openly licensed, so everyone can do whatever with that kind of data, can sell it as a book, and so on. Now, another kind of open data would be public transit company data or time schedules. That's also very important, right? If over the entire world we succeed in making sure that timetables are in a good way disseminated for everyone available, so they can reuse it, so they know when to take a certain train, that would be awesome. And actually, the Belgian Railway Company is working on that a bit, step by step, slowly. The lane as well. also MEV-based TIP, also tech, and also on a European level, they're trying to make that happen. And in a lot of fields, you will see that there will be some regulations in order to open up data or to structure data better, to link data better together. That's all part of open data. Now, another one is from the academic side. It's in fact one example of, it's a bit small, but it's a map where you actually see frequencies of birds passing by on that specific location. So it's people from a Flemish university, or it's INBO, Institute for Biodiversity in Belgium, that actually added sensors to seagulls. And they added sensors to seagulls. They let them fly away. They track the data. They store it on their system. They do research with that. And after that research, they decided, hey, we can put it open on the web. We can give it away as open data so that other people can also do research with that. That's also a good use case for open data. And then the third one is so we had somewhere in the collaborative sphere, we had something about private companies, we had something about, although that's debatable, we had something about academics, and now we have an example of government. The government also publishes data. Why? For instance, if you have an address register, and this is actually a screenshot from the central database in Flanders, where they now opened up all the officially registered addresses. Really important, because right now a certain company, if they would actually want to know whether an address existed, the only way to do that would be to send a postcard and to see whether it returns. So in order, the economic value created by just making sure that people can check whether an address actually exists is pretty relevant, I think. But these are four isolated projects. The real added value, I think, from open data is if all these different parties, they also from other use cases, that they publish data in a similar way. If we have that, if they start to publish data in a similar way, we can actually also query over them. So I could answer questions like, what's the route to work with the highest probability to see a water bird? So if you would be able to do that, maybe there's a water bird lover in the audience. I don't know, someone who lives. No? Well, there's always this this thing that you don't know at the beginning when you start to publish data what people are going to use your data for. And that's a nice example. It's a stupid question, but I want people to be able to answer that question, because there are a lot of other questions that can be answered. A side note: this data is also open data. It's from the LifeWatch project. It's also funded by the European Commission. It's awesome. Good. Let us think like a data publisher. If you want to share data between two systems, that's something probably all of us have at some point already done. Like we've created an Excel file and we've sent it via email to someone else, right? That's sharing data between two parties. So you ask them, in what format do you want the data? You have maybe a meeting about the model of your data, and you make sure that certain questions can be answered over your system. But sharing data on the web is a bit more difficult. So give the data publisher, so if you're a reuser, please give the data publisher some slack, because it's a new thing. It's like all of a sudden you have your system as a data publisher, where all these people that you don't know all of a sudden have to get access to your data. They don't know about your data model. They don't know about how you share the technical means. They don't know about the legal constraints. So in fact, every one of these parties that you don't know would have to phone you and would make arrangements about all these different things. And I think it's a challenge to try to automate these phone calls. That's actually the real challenge behind open data today still, I think. Let's think like a data consumer, because if I'm one of these data consumers that you don't know, let's change the picture. We are that guy that wants to, or girl, of course, that wants to reuse the certain data sets. Well, we don't see your system, and we don't see your data model, and we don't see things. We just see a bunch of things on the web a lot of data sets and you want as quick as possible to be able to reuse it. Let's go back to my example of the city of Rome and how to make sure that more people can live together. Well, in fact, we could translate that towards making sure that one person can reuse as much data as possible. That's in fact what you want to achieve. You want to be able to answer certain questions over as much data as possible. So from the moment that we start automating this, that's the moment where magic will happen in the environment of open data. So if you're a data reuser in the room, that also takes a bit of rethinking about how you reuse the data itself. You need to try to find these common things among these common aspects of certain data sets among all the data sets that are published online, so that you can know, like, if I just write my code for this data set, it will automatically also work for another data set. And that's also a challenge still. But the first and foremost thing of open data is legal certainty. This is a friend of mine, Jeri, who we were studying, or we were school pals, and we started to reuse the data from the Belgian railway company, and we actually didn't get oh, thank you for making this awesome mobile website. Now we got a cease and desist letter saying you have to stop using your data. It's pirate data, they would call it. You are infringing on copyright. So afterwards, we did what every student would do. We just published it online, and we said, no, we won't take it offline. And by doing that, in fact, there was an entire debate about this data, and right now, SNCB, or the Belgian Railway Company, actually has to publish their data. But you don't want this legal uncertainty where you all of a sudden can get a cease and desist letter for your system. So what do we want? Well, that's why we created the open definition. So at opendefinition.org, you can find a very simple definition of open data. And this definition, the only aspect of it is a legal one. So it's not a technical one, it's just make sure that your data is openly licensed, so that someone, a reuser, can just visit the dataset, can discover, it's an open license, so I can just work with this data without any hassle. There we go. So we want the world. We want a world where knowledge creates power for the many, not the few. That's the baseline of Open Knowledge International. And from the moment that we have this legal certainty, then we can get into making sure that we automate these technical challenges. And that's what my colleague Niels from EMODnet is going to talk about. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. So, and the next speaker, you already briefly announced him. We have Niels Walraven, also from EMODnet, who will talk about the Smart Flanders project. So, Niels, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. If we can get the slides up. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in the Smart Flanders project, which is a project funded by the Flemish government, by Minister Lisbeth Homans, responsible for urban policy, and where we're focusing on smart cities. So taking these ideas around open data and what they can actually mean for society, the impact that they can have, and taking that into a city context. What does this mean for cities? How can they actually start doing this? How can they devise policies around this, but also actually implement those policies? And so the context where this program came to be is that you already saw several different initiatives going on at the Flemish level, like the address list, for example, which is now available as linked open data in beta. Publication of a smart city book and more awareness about the concept and all the challenges that it brings with it, basically. All kinds of international trends that were pointing more towards collaboration rather than cities going at it alone. This idea of interurban competition, more focusing on collaboration. How do we achieve these challenges, these urban challenges that we're all facing? How do we tackle those together and not go at it alone? So also this idea of the quadruple helix that you see popping up. So all of these different actors in an ecosystem trying to work together, again, rather than doing things alone. A lot of complexity, a lot of challenges, and trying to find ways of tackling those. And also combating fragmentation, and that's what Peter also hinted at. We need standards, we need agreements on how to communicate with each other for these things to work. And so that led to this idea of a smart region approach, and that is what the Smart Flanders program in this case became. So what is the bottom line of Smart Flanders? You see all this hype around IoT, around smart cities, but also a lot of uncertainty, definitely with cities. What does this concept actually mean for us? What's the impact? How do we make this impactful? So the goal of, or the question rather that we try to answer is, what are the urban challenges that we can start tackling today in a better way by linking and opening data? And so the program, although it's called Smart Flanders, it's really focused on this question of open data and how to get that more available to, for people to reuse, basically. When we do that exercise, when we start identifying those challenges and which data do we need, who actually owns this data, how can we get it open, of course we're going to start identifying new opportunities. And maybe there are questions around, maybe we should capture this type of data we're not doing today, or this data is being captured by a private party, we don't have access to it. How do we tackle these types of challenges? And so we have a number of principles. It's a support program, so we're there for these cities basically. We support the 13 center cities, so it's by approximation the largest cities in Flanders, and also the Vlaamse Gemeenschapscommissie, so Flemish representation in Brussels. We focus on real-time open data, and so it's about these shared references basically, these common standards that we want to use as open as possible. It's about cooperation between cities, like I said, not going at it alone, but tackling these challenges together. And what's really important is that it's implementation driven. So it's a 3-year program where we actually want to do things. We're not going to talk about which standards could we use, what does this mean for us. It's not a theoretical exercise. We hit a lot of theoretical questions, but we want to do things. And it's by doing those things, by actually trying what does this mean if I want to open these datasets, what does that mean for my processes as an organization? What does that mean for the people working in my administration? What does that mean at a political level? How can we actually cooperate together? Those types of questions are really important and come to the surface only when you start doing this thing. We have a strong international network, which is important, and we also carry out this idea of trying to have the smaller cities around these large cities participate. How can we involve them? For them, this is really a challenge. It's a question of scale, basically. So we try to get them to participate through those larger cities. We have 3 main approaches, well, 3 main parts of the project. And the first phase is where we're at right now in that maturity check, is trying to see where is everybody, basically. When it comes to open data, where are our cities? How far are we actually along? Because you have cities working at very different speeds. And very important is that we're working on an open data charter in that sense. So the 13 cities together will come out with a charter, with a set of common principles that they all will carry out actively. Those are both strategic principles, but also some technical principles. Those standards that we need to agree on will also be included in that charter. And then that's the doing part, is this reality check. We will do data pilots, so we will actually open up data, and we'll try to stimulate also the market to actually reuse that data as well. But getting it out there is sort of the first step, in a good way. So according to those principles of collaboration, of doing things together, according to a common set of standards, that's really the goal there. And then in the final stage of the project, we also want to roll out larger test beds, basically, do real-life testing at a larger scale, for example, here in Antwerp in the City of Things Lab, but also in other environments that are starting to establish themselves. We really want to test that out in a real-life setting. What happens when you take these new services, these new ideas, into the real world, basically. And we have the partners listed there. So what's the offer that we then bring to cities? It's a number of practices, best practices, a number of actual tools that they can use for cost-efficient data publishing. And it's really important. There is a lot of strain on administrations that we do this in a cost-efficient way, a way that's feasible for them. We want to do those data pilots that have a societal impact and that are basically coming also from challenges that the cities formulate themselves. So we're not going for the things, the data sets that can be easily published. We're going for the challenges that cities are formulating themselves, basically. We want to stimulate the actual reuse of that data, so that's important, engaging the market and potential reusers. Working also towards better data sharing between governments, so not only between cities, but also towards the Flemish government, for example, federal government, and even higher up. Another thing is that's very important to take into account is that all of these cities already have an existing infrastructure. They have legacy systems, they process data in a certain way, and we're not oblivious to that. We need to take that into account. They might be locked into certain contracts, they have deals with certain vendors. We take that into account and we build on what's already there, basically. We build on those available solutions. We support them in participating in international projects as well, and trying to link those data pilots up to maybe European projects as well, for example. What do we ask of them is mainly participation right now. So we have a number of working groups. We want to get this charter launched. We're working very closely with them on that right now. And then we're taking this maturity check idea. So we're in a process of doing a lot of interviews right now with cities to see where is everyone basically. So that's ongoing right now. And by the end of this year, that will result in 14 portraits basically, 14 snapshots of the current situation when it comes to open data and the thinking about smart cities in these participating cities, and that will be publicly available as well. And that will sort of be another starting point to see, okay, where do we go in the next few years with all of these smart city initiatives. And so we started in January, but we already have a running data pilot that basically really got traction over the summer that focuses on real-time parking information. And so we have now available as linked open data the real-time occupancy of off-street parking garages in the cities that you see listed here. We're working actively with these other cities to also get that data included. And parking is a very interesting one because in many cities this has been given to private partners to handle, for examples, and cities very often in one signature also signed away their access rights to this information. And so we can sort of act as a neutral partner to try to get this information back into the public domain, to get this opened up, which is a long and difficult process. But this is sort of the role that we can play as a neutral partner in between to try and get that information out there again. And so the links will be available to you. We have a proof of concept where you can see in real time the occupancy of the parking garages in those cities, and where you can also, so we can go back as far as you want, you can see the historical data as well. And we have the occupancy, you can compare the occupancy in different cities, in different parking garages over time as well. And so you can try to get some insights from that data. And so it's not about this visualization, it's just something that we have to show, and we built this visualization to show what you could do with this data. It's more about these things. It's about automating these types of processes, making that data available for reusers in a very easy way. So we already have some startups that want to reuse this data, but we're aiming, of course, for the big guys. If you can have this type of data integrated in your TomTom device, in your Google Maps, in your Waze, this becomes very valuable. But to achieve that, you need scale. So you need to publish this data according to the same standards across at least these 13 cities for Flanders, I would say, and preferably even more, before any one of these big companies is going to start using that. And so we want to build this scale. That's the goal of this smart region idea, is to achieve that together and to sort of form a counterbalance, a counterweight to these big guys. So it's about that idea of scalability. It's also about keeping the cost for the cities themselves as low as we can. So that's where the technical principles come into play. Also for building policy on top of. So internal reuse within the city of this type of information is also a big challenge. And of course, towards transparency for citizens, for civil society organizations, but also for companies, this type of data can be quite valuable in, again, ways that we do not necessarily can predict. So we have to see what type of reuses can come out of this data. So just to close, this is the team, because many of them are here. This is Pieter Ballon, who's the strategic coordinator of the program. I'm coordinating sort of the day-to-day operations of the program. And we have a very interdisciplinary team. And so I have a background in communication sciences, as does Pieter Ballon. And then we have Pieter, who just presented here, who's our chief technology with an engineering background. So we have more technical people on board. Matthias van Kompernolle, who's also present here, who focuses more on the policy and methodology aspects of the program. Jan Wabe, who's doing a PhD on smart city monitoring, so another different perspective. What are indicators, KPIs you need to take into account when we talk about smart cities? And Davor Meersman to make that international link to international networks, to do international projects, and so on. And so we have this really interdisciplinary team, which also is a good offer towards these cities. We can answer both the policy questions, the technical questions, and those types of challenges are very complex and need different viewpoints. So that's sort of how we're putting these ideas of open data and sort of the philosophy into practice today in the Smart Flanders program. We've only been running for about 9 months now, and so we're really looking forward to building more data pilots, getting more data available, and taking a look also in this context how we can support EMODnet in publishing more data according to the same principles, basically. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels. And by this time we are perfectly on schedule, so thanks to the speakers for speeding up a little bit. And I give now the floor to Jan Bart Kallewaard, who will introduce the challenges that are posed to you, the participants of OpenSea Lab.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jan Bart Kallewaert. I work for the Secretariat of the European Marine Observation and Data Network. And in my talk, I will try to give you a bit of a flavor of what we talk about when we talk about EMODnet and some of the challenges that we have in mind for you. So, myself, I'm a bioengineer by training. I've been involved in research and dealing with marine issues for about 20 years now. But before that time, I was already quite a lot reading on scientific and especially sci-fi literature. And it struck me at that time, this quite famous quote from Arthur C. Clarke, who was quite right to observe that it's a little bit inappropriate to talk about planet Earth. While looking at it from various angles from space, it's quite clearly more water than land. So it's been very important to us. So since the beginning of time, we've been living close to the sea. We've been using the sea as a resource for food, for transport. Nowadays, we really realize how important the oceans are to us. The ocean system is critical in the climate system. It provides a buffer against climate change effects and impacts. It accounts for production of about 50% of the oxygen that we breathe. And it's also a source of renewable energy these days. It's an important sector. But it's also a source of anti-cancer drugs and other medications that a lot of people don't know. More than 25,000 years ago, the Polynesians were already very skilled seafarers. They had a very keen knowledge of the ocean currents. They understood the star constellations and used it for navigation, and they produced their own maps using sticks and shells. Later on, the ancient Egyptians and Romans and Greeks were also very skilled seafarers. They built incredible ships, if not only for trade, then certainly for making war. And some of the most ancient maps that we have today still are from that period, covering the Mediterranean Sea. Modern oceanography and scientific research at sea really started off much later. And the first real scientific or oceanographic expedition took place in the 19th century. During a couple of years, a British naval vessel, which was turned into a research vessel equipped with a chemical library and all, systematically sampled the oceans and collected data in a very scientific way. Today, we are still sending out ships at sea to collect samples and to process and analyze them, but we are doing much more. We have a vast array of tools available to collect data in and about the marine environment. We're using satellites to observe the color of the sea. We can observe phytoplankton blooms. We're throwing a lot of equipment in the sea, floating devices, autonomous vehicles. We have coastal and seafloor observatories, cabled networks, all of them equipped with sensors which are becoming increasingly small, more autonomous, more independent, and are also increasingly interconnected through a cyber infrastructure which allows to stream the collection of data directly in real time or near real time to those who rely upon that information. This is very important because our activities and the intensity of use of our ocean resources is increasing, but it comes at a huge cost, and that's a specific problem we have in Europe, which is largely carried by the member states, by the countries. So historically, a lot of the data that has been collected ended up in national or local databases, different systems, collected in slightly different ways, stored in different formats, described in different languages or not at all. So if you wanted to get a more global picture of what was happening at the sea basin level, for example, this was very, very difficult to patch together, to bring together, and to have that pan-European view. That's why in 2009, the European Commission, Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries, started to fund our network, EMODnet, which is really a network of about, now I think we have 150 organizations throughout Europe who are working together to assemble different marine data resources and harmonize the datasets and making them much more available to users in an interoperable way, free of restrictions on use. We do that, so these 150 organizations are divided in thematic assembly groups because the teams are very different, the disciplines are very different, the types of data are very different, and the communities as well. So we cover geology, biology, chemical data, data on the physical state of the ocean now, but also historical data, data on the seabed habitats, also on human activities and the bathymetry. All of that, so the entire network or the activities is based really on the principle that you collect data once and then use it as many times as possible. To give you a little bit of an idea what kind of data we are talking about, when we talk about bathymetry, we're talking about depth, we're talking about data sets from surveys, we are talking about the topography of the seafloor. When we talk about geology, EMODnet geology is collecting data on coastal behavior, geological events, underwater volcanoes, for example, minerals that occur throughout Europe, seabed substrate, and seafloor geology. Seabed habitats is developing or has developed a pan-European broad-scale seabed habitats map. But in order to make this map, they had to rely on a lot of input data sets, which they are also making available, for example, on light and oxygen at the seabed. When we talk about chemistry, we're talking about concentrations of substances that occur in the water column, in the sediment at the sea bottom, and also in organisms. Physical data is probably something that's more easily to understand. We're talking about wave, information about wave, currents, wind, sea level, and ice coverage. Human activities are collating data from various sectors, oil and gas infrastructure installations at sea, mariculture sites, mariculture that's aquaculture at sea, where people are disposing waste or ammunition from ancient wars, wind farms where they are located and things like that. What these groups are also doing is using that data to build on top of that a number of data products, mostly maps. We have a few examples. One of the most used and probably of widest interest is the digital terrain model or digital bathymetry, which at this point gives a pan-European map of the bathymetry at a resolution of about 250 meters. And we're working on a new version which would cover around 80 meter resolution, I think. There is also collaborations with other European programs, the space program, Copernicus, where we make available maps showing the ice coverage extent. But each of these groups are developing these products, one, because they are of interest to a very wide range of users, and two, also to show the power of marine open data. It's not the intention to develop products to compete with commercial service providers. It's really just to show what can be done, but much more can be done, of course. The EMODnet Central Portal has a product catalog where you can search and browse all of these data layers. You can then easily find what you need and download them. And this is a tool that's been developed by the Flanders Marine Institute, who are responsible for the EMODnet Central Portal, in fact, are also coordinating EMODnet biology. And Flanders Marine Institute here in Belgium is, has to be said, one of the leading European organizations in the field of marine data management, specific competences in biological data. They're also a co-organizer of this hackathon. A central portal allows you to have a quick overview of what are the different data layers from the different teams, and you can visualize them on top of each other and also download them quickly. That brings me to the Open Sea Lab competition. And it may be interesting to know that EMODnet is really focusing on professional users from four thematic or four domains, four communities. It's the private sector, is civil society, is the research community in the public sector. And cross-cutting along those 4 target groups, there are 3 important domains where we'd like you to work on developing ideas or solutions or applications. When we look at marine environment management and monitoring, this is very important, of course, as we are increasingly using our marine environment, the pressures increase, and we really have to manage it very closely to make sure that we can keep on using the ocean resources for many generations to come. One specific area that we are now working on, it's quite hot at the moment, is marine litter and microplastics. So if you have great ideas in that area, that would be very useful. When we think about public knowledge and services, here you can think of potential educational apps or tools towards a wider audience. Also, citizen science is something that we are increasingly becoming interested in. There could be applications where ordinary people can make observations with their smartphone or what so on marine mammals, sightings of birds, that can then feed into the pool of data that's made available through our network. Maritime activities in the blue economies is a very important topic for our network, but also for the European Commission, using marine knowledge to support the development of, to create more value, to stimulate job creation, etc. And there are many sectors that you can think of. There are the more established sectors, such as shipping, coastal tourism, but also a wide range of new emerging markets and sectors. Think of offshore wind energy that's already maturing, but also marine biotechnology, aquaculture. So there are plenty of opportunities there, and I think the next speaker will say a bit more about what are the opportunities in the blue economy. So where can you find EMODnet data resources in your search, in your competition, in your application when you want to participate? First of all, of course, on the central portal. This is the main information hub where you will get a complete overview of the resources that we have available, and it also acts as a gateway to the 7 thematic subportals. And it's there really at the subportal level where you have all of the data sets and products that are available that you can find and download them. But to help you out, we have also created on the OpenSeaLab website a dedicated page which gives an overview of some of the data resources that are available. We put there the web services that you can use. There are some snippets of code that you can use to extract certain data streams. And in the coming days and weeks, we'll also start populating it with specific data sets from the different teams that you can use to experiment, to try out your ideas. So what we would like to see, of course, is that you use EMODnet data and products, preferably from 1 or more teams. But can you use other resources? Of course. I think one of the values or the great values of open data, as Peter has pointed out, is to combine it with many other types of data that probably we hadn't thought of before. There are plenty of resources available, I'm sure, at the national level, in your countries, in your region. I will just point to 2 that you may think of consulting that could provide some opportunities, some new ideas. One is the Copernicus space program, which is also funded by the European Commission, which has a marine component, so we're talking about satellite data, but also they are using in situ data, so data collected at sea to validate the models. So we're talking about model data. They're looking at forecasting and hindcasting for a number of parameters. So have a look at this site. It has a lot of information and data available as well. Another tool, which you are probably not familiar with, but which is a great tool, is the European Atlas of the Seas. It's yet another tool developed by the European Commission to provide the wider public, students, people who are interested in finding simple information, maps about the sea, where all of that data is gathered and available. Now, yesterday I learned that there is at this stage not a mobile app for the European Atlas of the Seas. Now, if you have the ability to develop an app that can use these data layers from the Atlas and combine them with data from EMODnet and other layers, that certainly would have my vote. So think about it. I would like to conclude by saying what we feel characterizes probably most our network, and that's interoperability. Interoperability between data, between systems, between organizations, but mostly between people. And on that note, I wish you good luck with your ideas, and I'm looking very much forward to seeing some of the results.
Thank you. I think the view is getting clear where we are going to, but now I have the great pleasure of introducing Ian Shepherd from the European Commission, who will give you some more challenges to work with during the 3 days.
Okay.
Ian, floor is yours.
There's no need to show that. It's a bit boring, so I've decided just to just to give a few ideas. I'm a bureaucrat, you see, so I work for the European Commission, and before we can do anything like make data available, we have to do an impact assessment, and we have to say what the economic value is. And this makes you think a bit. You have to present your case in front of what they call a regulatory impact assessment board, and it's something like the Spanish Inquisition. They really question you. And so we came up with 3 benefits. And the first benefit is that it helps you to do what you're already doing more cheaply. So if, for instance, you want to do an impact assessment of a new wind farm, before, to find the data, to collect the data, to put it all together with different formats, different baselines, cost money. So if you can get all the data that's already harmonized, that you can pick up from just one shop window, then it's obviously saving you money. So it's cheaper to develop this new ocean economy, which we believe is going to really take off. It has the potential now to really be a new source of growth and jobs. And the second benefit is obviously the one why you're all here. It's innovation. Before, it was only the people who had the data, the Belgian Railway Company or the town of Antwerp, that could provide applications based on their data. But once you open it up to this crowd of bright people like yourselves, you can put data together from different places, and you create innovation, and that's what Europe needs. Europe needs innovation. And then the third economic, and we could put numbers on these. We managed to convince the Spanish Inquisition that this was worth doing. And then the third one is on reducing uncertainty and this is difficult to put into numbers. You only can find examples, but we had one that came after we'd started work. We created a new seabed map of Europe. We put together data from about 70 different organizations that previously was all scattered to create, a map of the hills, the valleys, and this data had originally been collected for navigation. Obviously, you want to know how deep the water is if your boat's going in. But putting together this map and then using it as a model for modelling storm surges made an incredible difference. The UK Met Office wrote to us and said, this has made a phenomenal difference in our forecasting of storm surges in the North Sea. And the advantages of this for saving lives, saving property, avoiding false positives, false negatives. You can actually quantify. So there's an enormous economic benefit of what you're doing here today. And then the last thing I was going to say was another practical example that happened 2011. There was a tsunami in Japan that struck Japan. And tsunamis always happened at bad times. I mean, the first one in the Indian Ocean happened during the Christmas holidays. This one happened during the Easter holidays. So nobody's in their office. And then you get a phone call, and somebody says, is it safe to eat the fish from the Pacific Ocean? And, oh, sorry. Is it safe to eat the fish from the Pacific Ocean? And of course, you've got not much idea. So you start to ask people, because you want to know, you want oceanographic models to see the spread of the radioactivity. You want the measurements that the Japanese are taking. You want to know the movements of fish, surprisingly enough, because one of the risks was that a big fish would swim into the contaminated area, eat the small fish, and swim out again. So you needed all sorts of information. And there was an art, and trying to get hold of this information was quite difficult. The Japanese published the measurements in PDF. They'd converted their Excel files into PDF files, and to try to convert them back into Excel took days, and trying to convince them to actually publish them in their original format was a real job. And in fact, there was an article in Nature a few weeks afterwards saying that it's really important in these emergency situations to make the data available, because then you get the whole community can work together. You get geeks and nerds and everyone who can actually produce the data, because the government wasn't providing this data. They'd asked us, and in fact, we did manage to give an answer in the end, but I think it took longer than it would have done. And of course, if it takes longer, you take the most conservative measures possible. You say, don't eat anything from the Pacific Ocean, which, when there was little risk, and that was harming the fishermen whose livelihoods depended on it. So there's an economic benefit to open data, and there's also very, very useful for emergency situations. So I think that's... The rest of my slides are a bit boring, and they repeated more or less what Jan Bart said. So anyway, we're looking forward very much to what comes out of this.
Thanks. Then we have the final speaker before the panel, and this is Alessandro Pitito, who will have some food for thought and some user applications that we might do with all these open data. Floor is yours.
Hello. Well, I must confess I'm feeling a bit nervous, because after so many terrific presentations, well, I don't know how else to put it, but mine's going to be a bit silly. But I suppose it's not my fault, because I was told this was going to be a convention of geeks. Well, it seems a bit too serious for me, but okay, have mercy on me. I want to start with a story, with a quote, a very famous quote that is often wrongly attributed to George Bernard Shaw. In fact, I think he never said that. But it goes like, if you have an apple and I have an apple and we exchange apples, then you and I will still each have one apple. But if you have an idea and I have an idea and we exchange these ideas, then each of us will have two ideas. And why I think this is interesting? Because it applies to data as well. I mean, apples are physical objects, so of course if we exchange apple, I mean, everything remains pretty much the same. But if we exchange data, well, both of us are better off. And this is, I think, what EMODnet is about. basically, because it's about sharing data, open data, so that all of us can be better off. We have, just to put things in a perspective, we have 7 portals, well, 8 portals now with the coastal mapping portals. Jan Bart said pretty much everything about it, so no need to go all over again. We have 8 portals on 8 different themes. And we have more than 160 organizations that are assembling, sharing marine data, data products, and metadata. And of course, this is equal to a wealth of data in our oceans. And when I say wealth, I mean it literally, because EMODnet, like I said, makes us richer. In neoclassical economics, this is called a Pareto improvement, a transaction or a new allocation of resources, whereby at least one person is better off and no one is left worse off. And this is exactly what happens when you share your data. I mean, you basically it's a win-win. You got nothing to lose. And the best thing is that it works even if you share your data, but your counterpart doesn't. Because, I mean, if I share my data with someone, well, I will leave that someone better off, and I'm not going to be worse off. So it's really a win-win, and this is why we should be sharing our data. But let's see some concrete examples of, this was theory. Let's see how EMODnet makes us richer, has made us richer. The first example, well, thank you, Ian. You just stole an example from my presentation. But it's about EMODnet bathymetry. They did a terrific job with that portal. And, well, it turned out that their data were used by the UK Met Office to improve forecast and storm surges. Now consider that it took me a couple of hours to rehearse this sentence that I need to read. I mean, in order to correctly forecast storm surge, it is vital that the model's tidal solution is accurate, which in turn requires an accurate bathymetry. So what happened is that the UK Met Office was using some bathymetric data. Then they found out that there was even that bathymetry. They started using their data, and this led to an overall improvement of their modeling. So this is one example of how EMODnet, or sharing data, can make people better off. Another example, I'm from EMODnet Human Activities. I'm the coordinator of EMODnet Human Activities. So now would like to talk about something that I know well. Like to walk into my own territory. This is another example. One of our first users, the Mona Lisa project, was a project that aimed to give a contribution to efficient and safe and environmentally friendly maritime transport. I mean, bottom line, they were testing, developing some e-navigational services for, dynamic routing, ships that had to change their route real time. They could use their systems to improve their navigation. And of course, to do that real time, you need a lot of data, basically. You've got to know everything there is at sea. And they used data from EMODnet Human Activities. And so are doing several nautical companies that make nautical charts. So these people are actually using our data to make up their charts, and they're making money out of it. And I mean, granted, we're not mad at them. We're quite happy. That's the spirit of the project. Another very interesting thing is that you can also combine data from different EMODnet portals. I'm human activities, but then you have bathymetry, geology, chemistry, seabed habitats, physics. Now, what you're seeing here is the viewer that's available on the central portal. It's a terrific tool because it allows you to have all of the EMODnet datasets at your fingertips in one place. Well, now I just tried, the dots you see there are oil and gas platforms off the coast of the Adriatic Sea, Italy and Croatia. So EMODnet Human Activities. And the thing with offshore hydrocarbon extraction, it always raises environmental concerns for obvious reasons. But the other side of the coin is that, you know, they also work as artificial reefs because ships can go there. So sometimes, you know, they also, conversely, they increase biodiversity, which poses us, you know, a series of questions, especially when it comes to decommissioning this platform. So, for instance, what you could do is to locate the platforms in the Adriatic Sea, and then you could switch on another dataset from EMODnet biology and try to test some hypotheses. Well, what I did there, I don't know if it can be done. I'm not a scientist myself, but it shows the potential of EMODnet. I mean, I just chose 2 random datasets, but you can do a lot more with that. And there's more to come. Well, now, bear with me because this is going to be beautiful. We'll soon be developing a vessel density map to map shipping. Now, the best thing about shipping is that it's one of the most ancient maritime activities. I mean, ancient civilizations, though at least those who thrived, they did so because they had access to the sea. So, I mean, they used ships to move people and goods from one place to another. And shipping is also great because it's the most environmentally friendly form of transport per ton kilometer. It's probably more environmentally friendly to move a container from Hong Kong to Rotterdam than to drive your car to the supermarket per ton kilometer. But of course, because of the volume of shipping, it also poses a series of threats to the marine environment. So what we're doing now with EMODnet human activities, we're not there yet, we just got started, is to make this this vessel density map. So basically it's what you see there. It's going to look like that. We didn't do that. That was made by our friends at Helcom. And a vessel density map basically shows you ship routes in a given period of time. So the darker the color, the more ships are in that area of the ocean. Like I said, we don't have it yet, but the data that Helcom shared, made available on their portal, are available for everybody. For instance, what you could do with that, you could download that data and use it for a variety of purposes. Some examples used. You can improve environmental modeling of antifoulants. You know, ships use antifoulants, but of course they dissolve in water, so it's a problem from the environmental perspective. Once you know all the routes and you measure the concentration of antifoulants, well, you can improve a lot your modeling. You can use it. You know, another big threat to the environment is that the noise from ships scares the hell out of marine mammals. Now, if you have a complete picture of where they're going, you can better understand how underwater noise affects marine mammals. You can estimate the impact of shipping on the seabed and its habitats. And guess where you can find the data? On EMODnet. You can map fishing behavior. But I mean, I don't have a vivid imagination. So basically what you have to do is just try to do whatever your imagination comes up with. There are plenty of possibilities that you can explore with these products. So you can use the terrific job that Helcom did, you can use EMODnet data, you can create something with a huge and enormous potential. But at this point, you know, I mean, I think one might be wondering, what's this got to do with me? I mean, why me? Why this group of people, the EMODnet community, are trying to reach out to other people? I mean, we have, well, how many of that? 160 organizations in Europe. So it's top-notch marine expertise, marine science expertise in Europe. Why are we reaching out to someone else? But the answer is actually that we need new approaches. We need new people, young people, and data enthusiasts, of course. We need to open up new possibilities. And to cut a long story short, we need to unleash the potential of our data, and we need to do it through new people. Then I want to finish with another quote. This one's from Steve Jobs. I think he actually said that this time. Said, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. So I think this is going to be the purpose of OpenSea Lab. I mean, we're not hiring you, or maybe we will, who knows? It depends. But I mean, we don't want people to join us at OpenSea Lab because we have to teach them what they can do with our data. No, 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 it's the other way around. We want you to show us what we could do all together with our data. That's the purpose of the event. So, well, I think that's it. I mean, EMODnet OpenSea Lab, 15, 17 November 2017. See you in Antwerp, which is here. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. I have some brief announcements. So we're ahead of schedule. This is the first conference where the speakers keep in time and even are a bit faster. So thank you for that. This means that we will have drinks a bit faster. Also the people at home, because we have the double-digit figures watching at us. So hello people at home. So enjoy your drinks. We will be joining you soon. We will have now a very brief break of 5 minutes. We will rearrange a little bit the room because we will have a panel session. After the panel discussion, I will introduce a bit more the bootcamp itself, what we will do, how you can apply, what are necessities, what do we ask from you if you want to apply. So keep watching if you are waiting for this moment. And then afterwards we have some testimonials, and then we will be done a little bit ahead of schedule. So now 5-minute break, and then we continue with the panel. these can be used if there are questions from the audience. Maybe. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thanks. Do you have to press something when you...
No, it's already on.
Okay.
Yes, we will start. So if we can retake your seats, please, and invite the panel up front. Most of you are already here. Now we will continue the program. Okay, thanks for sticking with us. We will now continue with the program, with the panel discussion, moderated by Pieter Kolpaert. We have more or less half an hour, and also from the audience, if you have questions, there will be room for questions to the panel. And also still use the hashtag. We have OSL2017. And also, if you're watching online, you can also post questions on Twitter, and we will try to answer them as much as possible. Peter?
Thank you very much, Dimitri. So, as a panel, what I would like to do, and this is like something very special, I've never done it before, so it's a first test case, is that I first would like everyone to think like a data publisher, and then in the middle of the panel we will say, stop, now we will think as a data consumer. So this is the first test, we will see how it goes. So first I would like to that everyone just shortly introduces themselves, like says their name, their affiliation, and why they are in this panel. Good, can we start with Pieter?
Yeah. Hello to you all. I'm Pieter Jan Jordaans. I'm a mechanical engineer working at Ceres, and I'm responsible for OWILAB, which is actually a research development and innovation platform supporting offshore wind energy research.
Thank you very much.
I'm Ian Shepherd from the European Commission, and I'm responsible for trying to keep the EMODnet funding flowing. So
That's fine. Hi, I'm Pieter Jan Noten, one of the founders of Project Mahi. We're actually building an autonomous vessel to do in situ measurements with a group of friends. So I think it's clear why we're here. Yeah.
Maybe you can quickly give a URL to everyone, to your project?
So it's www.projectmahi.com. So everybody can have a look and already have an idea of what we're doing.
Hi, I'm Sara Garavelli from Trusted Services, and today I'm here representing the Horizon 2020 funded project Blue Bridge, which delivers data services to the aquaculture sector, but also to the marine and maritime communities.
Hi, I'm Erik Laurijsen van Dateland. I'm the CEO. We're a team of 25 data visualization experts, and we help companies, enterprises communicate better with data.
Thank you very much. So there we go. Pieter Jan, I will first ask you a question. Like, as a data publisher, right? What does open data mean to you, and why on earth would you publish open data, and would you publish open data at all? That's maybe also a good question to you.
Maybe that's the first question for us, at least. We're working together with quite some Belgian offshore operators of wind farms and conducting in-field research measurements. But for us, it's not always able to publish open data. So we have a lot of data, and later I will show you some examples. But by contracts, we cannot just open them all up. Some of them we can open up, and we have some examples of that. And one of the examples I will present later, how open data can create new opportunities and new companies, for example, with respect to the blue energy opportunity or economy. But yeah, one has to say that certain critical data for an emerging sector, some companies don't want to open up all data because of a competitive advantage.
And that's the case for your company as well, or?
Well, we are a non-for-profit research organization, so we facilitate the data and use advanced algorithms to come up with process data and use application knowledge to gain insights, which can lead to cost reduction within the sector. For us, it's an enabler to conduct the research which we want to do, to have data for the researchers which they're seeking for. In our ideal world, we would have our own wind turbine somewhere in the North Sea, which is owned by ourselves and in which we can open up all data as a non-for-profit research center. But at this moment, this is...
Is there someone in the panel who owns their own sensors?
We will start to own some sensors. So
maybe you take the other mic. Yeah.
So we don't have that many sensors yet. That's perhaps also one of the reasons why we're here.
It's on the autonomous boat,
It's
right?
on the autonomous boat, yes. So next year, let's say we're not yet a data publisher, but we will be one next year when we do our voyage of the autonomous vessel across the ocean, and then we'll have some sensors on board and we'll transmit live data. So the idea is indeed that we also share the data we get or we measure. During our voyage, we upload it through a satellite link to a server, and we display it on our website. So perhaps we can make some sort of a partnership with EMODnet and see what we can do to incorporate our data into their website.
You must be crazy. Why would you just upload that data to a website and just give it out for free?
Let's say there are a couple of reasons. One of the reasons I just said before, there can be a mutual partnership. We can also get something out of it. It's like I see open data, open source as a community. You put something in, you get something back. So we see this as an opportunity also to get some visibility for our project, because visibility means perhaps some additional sponsorship. So for us, the idea from the beginning was that we will upload all of the data we get, and we'll see how far we get.
In each case, I hope I didn't give you the idea to keep it private.
No.
Okay, great. So is there someone else in the panel who has access to data that needs to be published and has different reason, or?
Yeah, and I can say a couple of words of what we do in Blue Bridge. So in Blue Bridge, we act more as a technological broker, because we offer our users the possibility to create some environments, virtual environments, where they can access the data, they can share the data with their collaborators, and they can also publish the results. So in this sense, we are a bit a data publisher. And what we do, we encourage our users to share the data. And by data, we don't only mean data sets per se, but also, for example, tools, workflows, or research objects. And we think that open data is not only, does not only mean that to make the data accessible, but also reusable. And that's why the data needs to be appropriately described through metadata. And as a data publisher, so why to give for free the data? We think that if we look at this from a public data provider perspective, we think that of course public data providers need their data to be used, because they need to prove to the funders that their data and the activities where they are investing money are creating some impact on the society.
But is it always possible, if you publish open data, that you can still track all the use as well?
Well, it might be possible. And what we also do, we think we pay particular attention, for example, to the provenance of the data, because this is a way for us to support the public data provider. So we need to make sure that the data are cited in a proper way. And instead, from a public sector perspective, as Peter Jan said before, we are working with a set of companies that they do not want to share their data because for them it's clearly an asset and the competitive advantage need to be safeguarded. But what we think is that we need to provide companies the right incentives. And for example, what we have seen that it's working, if you give back companies enriched data, this could be a right incentive. We have an example. We are collaborating with some aqua farms companies, and all the aquaculture producers need to improve the performance of their companies in terms of cost, growth rate, but also as well as they want to be environmental friendly. And to do that, they need to be able to perform a benchmark. But if you want to do a benchmark, you need to know the data of the other companies that, of course, they don't want to share the data. So what do we do in Blue Bridge? So we take the data from the companies, we invite them to share the data with us, we anonymize the data, and we return back the anonymized data sets that the companies can use for the benchmark. So for us, this is a simple example, but that proves that providing back enriched data can be the right incentive.
Because if we have to measure impact, and I think for the European Commission that's really important. And Mr. Shepherd, do you already have at the European Commission itself? Do you already have evidence of open data making a real impact, or do you have numbers about that, things like that?
Yeah, well, in our impact assessment, we did some ex-ante evaluation of how much value we would expect to get. And now we're doing an interim evaluation, trying to look back on what we've achieved over the past few years to estimate it. But it is a bit of the spirit of the times. The biggest opposition, because we were dealing with these big public agencies like hydrographic agencies, geological surveys, meteorological services, and they had a particular business model where they want to have a monopoly over the added value services. So they sell the data, but at such a price that nobody can afford it. And this was not because they made any money out of the data. They didn't, but it prevented other people producing the weather forecasts, the geological maps, etc. But we have seen things are moving, things are changing. And strangely enough, the French are some of the most advanced now. Their hydrographic agency has really encouraged this multi-use of data. They can see the advantages of not only using the seabed data for navigation, but for like storm surges, for planning your wind farms, for coastal erosion, and they are becoming some of the most leaders in Europe, which is, surprising for the French. Oh. So, I forgot this was on internet. No, they are very enlightened, I think.
Yeah, interesting. You wanted to add something?
I wanted to comment, because sometimes there's the perspective of open data, and you put it open on a server, and everybody can download it. Maybe this is not the correct way to share data. We rather have a shared data methodology in which if somebody would like data, and he says, okay, I want bathymetry data of wind farms, for example, that we can ask operators if they can share it. But of course, they will ask, what are you going to do with it? Is it for research purpose or is it for commercial purpose? And the model around that is very important. Second thing, and that's a practical thing, next year there will be some GDPR rules on privacy, for example, meaning that if you publish data somewhere from your customers, you also have to trace what is being done with this data. What is being done with this data? And if you just open it up publicly and somebody downloads the data and is then sharing it additionally to another and another and another, actually you as a data provider need to track that, because if a wind farm operator who is sharing wind data, for example, would say, I want you to clean everything or delete everything, it's your responsibility. So there's also a practical thing about how the methodology of sharing data or open data works.
Good point. Erik, we didn't have you yet. It's very difficult, of course, because we're in a data publishing, or from a perspective of a data publisher, and you're probably one of the only one who cannot identify as a data publisher over here.
Yeah, indeed.
But if you would be able to think like them.
Yeah, so we did one project for a government, and they also like to invest in open data because they see that there's a lot of innovation possible with open data. They see that they can't afford or they can't innovate everything. So they hope that by offering open data, that there will be a fabric around them that can make cities more smarter, so that entrepreneurs will take use of the data and make more evolved business models. So the economic value of open data can get harvested. So those are the things that we see. A lot of companies, want to monetize their data, so they open it for a price. So I haven't seen too many companies yet who really open it without an economic benefit for themselves directly.
I think indeed it depends on what your business looks like. If, let's say, the data is your core of how you make money, it's very difficult, of course, to hand over that data and give away your competitive edge. But it depends indeed on your company, and if you can, let's say, build a community around it and see if you can get more out of it by let's say, the help of the community, that people will start to develop, will start to use your data, and will try to help you move along and say, perhaps I noticed an error there. I think you need to change it. Might be, let's say, the offset for giving away the data. But I indeed think, let's say, governments are in a position to give away the data and hope that they can, let's say, it's like a nurture ground for other companies to build something upon it. But they do not, their competitive edge does not depend on this data. So
this is my watch saying that 15 minutes are over and that we should get into another perspective. Into the perspective, of course, of data consumer. And Erik, I will immediately ask you again, like, as a data consumer, like, what does open data mean to you, and are you going to become filthy rich because of open data?
Filthy rich, no, but I think a lot of enterprises are looking at how they can use open data, so that there is a real legit interest in the companies, I at least see. So they're looking for open data to enrich their own data and to make high-level services that they can again sell to their customers. So specifically for OpenSea data, we have been talking to some shipping companies. There's some large shipping companies in Belgium, and they tell that ships of the future will spawn a lot of data. Everything will be monitored, from motor performance generators, the rudders, the currents in the oceans. So they really think that in the future, to become successful, they have to monitor everything that's going on those boats. So for them, it makes a lot of sense that if there is open data available, that they will mix and match, so that they will make more performant boats in the future. So that's definitely a trend that everybody's looking at, what open data is available and how can I make a better service. So that's absolutely what people are looking for.
Yeah. And your business model right now is to just make sure that other people can be helped to reuse open data?
So
am I correct?
We're in the business of visualizing the data. So there's so many tools out there to analyze the data, but in the end, if that insight stays within a small group, then things don't change. So if you want to engage better with your customers, or if you want to communicate better with other people in your team or other companies, then that story of the data needs to be told. And there's not a lot of tools right now. It's pretty expensive. So we're making a platform to make it easier to communicate with data. So a data visualization storytelling platform. And there's quite a need for that. So a lot of companies are frustrated that they have a big data science team or big business analysts, but the insights don't flow through the whole population of customers or employees, and therefore the change doesn't happen. So the storytelling, which is happening really excellent in a lot of news media in Anglo-Saxon countries, we predict that also will happen in enterprises. And those companies who take their data and make higher level services to companies, they're also interested in open data. So they're really trying to look for those value chains.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I fully support what Eric has just said, that there is interest from the private sector. And we were asking, as Blue Bridge is a research project, so we asked ourselves the question, but is there any added value for the private sector? And we launched a call for SMEs. And now the result is that, for example, we are building application for 5 SMEs in different areas. For example, one SME is asked to use marine open data to monitor the impact that climate will have on a species distribution. Another one will use the data to monitor the impact that man-made underwater noise will have on species. So you see, we have seen that there is the interest, so the companies are looking for open data. What you've seen that they are a bit scared to approach this world because they think that it's mainly the research world, but it's not anymore, I think.
So wait, I will continue a bit on that because right now your team is actually reusing data from other parties in order to create this.
What we are doing, as I was saying before, as we are more a broker, we are providing the users with seamless access to existing data providers, such as EMODnet, but also, as Jan Bart was mentioning before, Copernicus. So we facilitate the usage.
For these 5 different SMEs you were talking about, you're now creating a very specific app to show how they can reuse
they
this
are
kind
building
of data.
the apps
They are building
with
it
our
themselves.
help.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
So we facilitate their access
Yeah.
to the data. We provide, of course, some analytics tool to support them. But the SMEs per se are building the applications.
And how easy is it today to reuse all this information and to build analytics tools on top of this information? Can you describe the process a bit like on that?
Well, as I said before, so what we do, I mean, we provide access to the existing datasets that are available through the EMODnet portals or through other data providers from Copernicus. So in these virtual environments that we make available for the company, they have the datasets. They will have some analytics tools already developed, for example, in the research world. But if they want, they can port in this virtual environment their own softwares or their own models. So we are in a position that we have a sort of sharing of knowledge together with the company. And the advantage for them is that they don't have to reinvent the full wheel because we are already providing some technology to support them. That, of course, for example, we provide also computing resources that they might not have.
And for the data integration, like you did the data integration once on your machine, and that's like all the data is copied to your machine?
Well, we use the web services, and so we access the data in this way, and the company can access easily the data. So we are not reinventing the access. What the added value that in some cases we provide is that we harmonize the data if they need a specific standard. For example, XDMX for the statistical data or NetCDF for the georeference data where they are not available. And these are among the most used services, so the harmonization and data analytics. So that's our way to facilitate their approach to the open data world.
Pieter-Jan, if you as a would think like a data consumer, and I think it would be really easy because I think that you will not just throw your data online, but you will also create some dashboards with this data yourself,
that was
right?
Indeed the idea. If we get, let's say, the data from the vessel, that we create some dashboards on the website to visually appealingly apply it or visualize it on the website. So in some way, we're also a data consumer. We get in the data from our vessel. It's our own vessel, but then we will indeed present it on our website in an appealing way. We can also make trends, let's say already compare also with other data we get, let's say satellite observations or forecast even, we can compare. But we still need to check how we can, let's say in the time frame, because it's a private project, we do it in our spare time, how much we can develop in our free time. Because the main goal is, of course, to build the vessel, to get the data, and then we can play with it later.
Are you going to link your data up to other data sets as well? Because I can imagine that you need base maps or something, or that you need...
Yeah, indeed, we'll use, let's say, some layers. We already have some conversations with a company called Windy, where we could take, let's say, their layers of, they provide a map onto which you can visualize wind, waves, temperature, and we can put markers on there to show where is the vessel. We can provide a dashboard to upload or to visualize our sensor data. So in that sense, we're both data publisher and data consumer. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if any one of the data publishers in the audience want to make sure that their data is linked up to them, talk to Pieter-Jan afterwards as well.
Talk to me after the presentations, and we can have a chat.
Are there any questions from the audience in the meantime?
So I have a question about publishing the data. Maybe it's something for you, Sarah. You said if you publish the data, you want to make sure that users of your data give you the right citations, so they cite your name, something like that. So if you go and look at the open source software world, where they're much further, I guess, in sharing application code, you have different types of licenses. So how you license your code or your data and how others can use it. Are there any initiatives that, for example, say, if you use my data and you process it to create new data, so process data that derivates from it, that you need to license it under the same terms or something like that?
Well, I think that this is an hot topic at European level. So I don't think that there is a solution yet. But for example, there was a recent publication from the JRC and Open Science Data Group, something like that, I don't remember exactly, focusing on IPR. And they were highlighting how IPR is different with respect to the data cycle. For example, so if you search for data, you don't have any license or IPR because metadata is free, for example. But if you look at data processing or, for example, to data storage, you need to make sure that you comply with the right license. So I think there are lots of efforts going on this at European level, but I don't think that there is still a solution or a unique solution.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, okay, good. Is there someone else with a question? Okay, then we will we'll continue with Mr. Shepherd. I think that there must be, during the last years, there must be some success stories with open data that was reused. Like you already mentioned, like the Meteorological Institute in the UK. Yeah. Like,
in fact, what the Americans do is they're even more open than we are. They don't put any restrictions on the data, so they don't know how it's being used. They don't know how the data are being used. And we're in a similar sort of position. Alessandro was telling us that recently that their data are being used by Shell, by a lot of companies, but they're not really tracking it. And this gives us a bit of a dilemma, because the more you track it, the more difficult it is to use, and the less people use it. But if you don't know how they're using it, you find it difficult to justify why you're giving it away. So this is quite a hot topic at the moment. But I think we're going to move a bit away from the American. We're going to try to get more information about, without putting restrictions on the use, but to try to get more information. I mean, of how you use it. But I mean, you have to log into nearly everything now, even Belgian Rail, Facebook, whatever. So, but also to come back to the Fukushima example earlier, because the sea, you have to remember, is not one country holds the data. if you look at the North Sea, there's about 10 countries around it, the Baltic as well. And if something happens, like there could be an oil leak from an offshore platform, you want to know, is the oil going to reach the shore? Is it going to damage a protected area? What other activities are going there? So you need to get data from lots of places, but you need it quickly. And you can't go around phoning people up and asking for them. You need to, or getting written permission. You really need to find it quickly. So that's another advantage, is this emergency situations where data can be very useful.
To come back to this, what you described, like whether to add a login or a registration before you can actually use data or not. Don't you think that if you will have no registration at all, and you will have a lot of reuse, that for the successful cases you will just see it?
No, not necessarily. We're not. I mean, the only reason I found out about this Met Office storm surge was because the lady, the researcher's boss knows me and sent me an email and told me. So, and this was, otherwise we wouldn't have known. And maybe they'll write a paper in a journal and we might see it, but they're talking about doing it, but otherwise we wouldn't have known.
Because there's also like, there was a mention of the licenses. You also have like some open data licenses that require you to attribute a source, so that if
yeah,
you
they
would
probably do, but you know, for us to get the information back, they will probably write in that this is data from EMODnet, but I mean, we don't regularly scan the internet looking for EMODnet. Well, maybe we should, but no, it's we don't really know, and
Okay.
this is something we need to really work on.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to we are nearing the end of the panel. So I would like to just have everyone turn by turn, each one on their own, and say like one key takeaway. Would you be able to start, Mr. Jordans?
As I said before, for me the key takeaway is you have open data, but you also have what I call shared data, which is sharing data in some kind of a partnership with the right environment or methodology in which everybody is happy. And then I'm also sure that companies would open up their data. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, maybe to follow on what you said, what we need are success stories that we can use to generate even more data. So I think this is what we're looking for you to help us with, maybe to find something new that's coming out of the data.
So we are kicking that off today. Yeah.
I think from our side, from our story, our perspective, it's great that we have EMODnet, because it's, let's say, a common platform for both data publishers and data consumers. So for us, it's very good to find connections where we can find, let's say, possible clients for our data, and how we can even optimize what we generate for those clients. So it's, let's say, a good connection, a good link for both the consumer and the publisher. So that's the key takeaway.
Well, I think that today we have heard about a lot of examples of applications or use cases and things like that. So I think that open data really is an opportunity for companies to set up new business, improve products, and to come back to Alessandro's question before, why do we need you? I think that the answer is that you need the data. So it's not that we need you, but in general the society needs data for the economy.
If you have a look at what's happening at closed data, then it's huge. You know, the sharing and the integration and what's going on there is just huge. And I think it's just the same is going to happen with open data, but it's like 5 or 10 years later. So we just have to wait a bit because there's less economic drive there. So it's coming along, and there's genuine interest from enterprises to do something with it, but it's a bit of chicken and the egg. So first they're working on the closed data, that's growing really, really fast. And I really see the need for enterprises to start using open data because it makes them smarter, it makes them better. So there's going to be a need, and the more need there is, the more the open data community will flourish.
So it's a great step to organize Open C Lab to give that a push in the back. Yeah. Thank you very much, my dear panelists, and I hope to see you at the next event.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I have the honor to present you the program to give you a little bit more insight of what will happen during the 3 days. So I already showed this slide. So Open C Lab is about a 3-day, it's a mashup between a hackathon, a competition, and a boot camp, because we really will help you fine-tune your ideas, and not simply geeky, goofy ideas, but ideas that really have value, have business value, societal value, and we will coach you and help you with that. So the competition is open for both individuals as well as teams. So we will also facilitate matchmaking and team building, because we don't believe that one individual will generate fantastic innovation. We believe it is teamwork. But the first day will be based about that, about forming teams, forming complementary teams. So it's about combining these data sets, we heard about that, and it's about come and go workshops. Very important, we believe in the power of iteration. So you will ideate, you will create, and then you will validate. And we will stimulate this process, and then that you iterate and enhance and improve your idea based on the work of your team members, based on working with the coaches, but also based on working together with the other teams. So it will be really a team event. So we already had the 3 key challenges, so you can already have some inspiration thinking about marine environment, blue economy, public knowledge and services, and already start thinking of ideas, how to reuse this data, how to put it into nice ideas, nice innovations. You can start working on that, or you can wait until the competition. Either one is fine. The process, very, very important. So the application site is open as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, so you can already apply at this moment. So you can choose team or individual. Each team requires different roles. You will see everything will be listed. So not only technical people, but also creative people we need. We need people with UX experience. We need people with business experience. So we will really compose and try to match these different teams, these different roles and skills, because we really believe, and also based on our expertise, because at IMEC Living Labs, we coach a lot of startups and we really help them during Living Lab project, and it's really a team effort, because alone or with only one type of roles you cannot manage to really create a good startup, but we will really help you during this process. And we have a lot of workshops that will be going on. So the first day is about inspiration, it's about matchmaking and ideation. It will take place here. The second day, on Thursday, we will get more in-depth on the content, so there will be technical people here coaching you with technical aspects, with the open data, data visualization, but also how to involve users in this process, and also business modeling, how you can have a business model underlying your ID, how you can fine-tune your ID based on some business model principles, which will also be part of the program. And the final day is about pitching, because the outcome of the process is a pitch. So we do not want a working prototype. This can be evolved, can be created after the bootcamp. If you can create one during the bootcamp, okay, the better for you, of course. If you can show something during your pitch, this might impress the jury even more. But the end goal of the Open C Lab is a good pitch. What will you do with this data? How will you use it? And what is your business model behind it? So it's basically a pitching competition that will end Friday, the 17th of November. 2 routes. You can follow all the advice that we have for you in store. You can consult all these coaches for you. So it's like a recipe that you're cooking. You can follow the cookbook that we have prepared for you, or you can do your own thing. You can work by yourself. That's also fine. We're open to that. But then we require you to have a good team, a good idea, and then you can work by yourself and create your own pitch. But we facilitate the tools for cooking, but you can cook also as you wish. Okay? If that is clear. We have 3 awards. We have the best student team, the best overall team, and the best pitch. We already have 1 sponsor that is sponsoring an award. There's an open call for more sponsors and more awards. So you can always contact me or Aaron Levy or someone from the EMODnet Secretariat if you want to sponsor. But we have some very nice and cool prizes. But also we think the greatest reward will be the experience. We will really have top people that will help you, that will coach you, and that will teach you a lot of stuff. So I think it will be really a worthwhile experience. So I would say if you're feeling motivated already, go to the website and start applying. And this is the first sponsor is DataCamp. We will have 1 of the awards already sponsored, but there's room for more. So we will now finish off with 2 presentations by startups, 2 Pieter Jans, so that's quite easy for me to remember. So Pieter Jan, floor is yours. Let you be inspired by some success cases.
Thank you. Can I have the pointer as well? Thanks. So, if the presentation pops up, okay. I will speak about a case story which we supported. It's the creation of a spin-off company. So I'm not the owner of the company. It's Dr. Geert de Sitter who started up the company, but we supported that company in the creation as it started from academic research, and actually data was essential in the creation of what they are offering now in industry. And the topic is about structural health monitoring for the offshore wind energy sector. So I will explain it later. Quick introduction who I am or where I'm working at. I'm working at CIRIS, which is a Belgian technology center. What we do is we support companies in technology innovation in multidisciplinary fields in different sectors. But in 2010, we have set up OILAB, which is the Offshore Wind Infrastructure Application Lab, and which has a mission to support companies with innovation in the sectors. Startups, SMEs, but also large companies like, for example, DME or Jan de Nul, which are quite known marine contractors. How do we do this? We have a cluster working in which more than 40 companies are active in. There we see what their challenges are. We have infrastructure. We set up European projects or local funded projects through VLAIO. And actually we as a collective center, we transport between supporting academic research or support industry-driven research. And maybe nice to know is in 2008, one of the first offshore wind farms in Belgium was commissioned. It was the Sea Power wind farm, 30 kilometers out of shore. And by that time, quite some Belgian companies were active in the value chain or in the creation of that wind farm. And a couple of large companies active in the sector, they said, well, basically we also need a technology center supporting this new industry because it might be of a strategic importance for the opportunities with respect to blue growth, as I explained. So in 2010, we were granted an IWT project called the OE project, and we got 6 million euros to invest in state-of-the-art test and monitoring infrastructure, meaning hardware to facilitate tests. For example, in the port of Antwerp here, we have built up one of the largest climatic test chambers of Europe to test components which are in a wind farm or in a machine in harsh environments. But also, we set up LiDAR measurement campaigns on a floating LiDAR device in the North Sea, gathering resource measurement data. And apart from that, we partner up with the operators, the wind farm operators, to know what their challenges are and also to add new sensors to these wind turbines to facilitate research. And one of these trajectories and one of the valorization or best case valorization examples was the creation of 24C together with the University of Brussels. So it was a successful project. 2 spin-out companies came out of it, and currently, as is, we are an innovatief bedrijfsnetwerk, which is basically an innovation cluster in which, again, a couple of companies are active in, together with some universities and actors within the chain of innovation. So, good idea to success story. So what we did as OILAT, we supported basic academic research from the University of Brussels, together with an operational wind farm, based on their challenges, and I will explain how we did this. And important in that respect, innovation, you have 2 approaches. You have the technology push and the market pull. Technology push is typically what academics like or like to do, and we also did that in the beginning because we didn't have any track records. And for example, with one of the research groups at the University of Brussels focusing on acoustics and vibrations, we went to an operator and we said, oh, we have great technology. We shouted it out loud, we have great technology and experts who can work on vibrations, and we want to do research on wind turbines, we want to add our sensors over here, etc. And we also saw an opportunity from other kinds of industries, for example, from the aerospace industry, in which the technology is used, for example, to assess the structural integrity of the wing of a plane. So that university group was doing tests with Airbus in order to see how the dynamic behavior of a wing occurs and gain insights which can be used to optimize designs. And this was the result at the first meeting. The operators, they were quite busy with the operational stuff, of course. They were just commissioning wind farm. They said, well, all this knowledge, and it's quite nice and interesting, of course, but how would it, what is the gain for us? What's the added value? And can we reduce costs, for example? Or are we going to increase the energy yield? And that was also, from our point of view, not clear back then. What happened then? I think nearly 6 months later, or 9 months later, we were asked, well, we have an urgent need to know a damping value. And damping value, it's a structural parameter, let's say, for a material or a structure. And you could compare it if you have a spring and you would touch it, then it dampens out. So it's actually a parameter, a mechanical parameter, but it's quite important, as I will show you later. And they needed to know the damping value for a structure, because that operator was also designing the next offshore wind farm, which was next to this wind farm. And so they saw an opportunity to learn from the existing wind turbines, which were quite the first far-shore wind farms in Europe. So we had quite some technology, and that's all. Yeah, it's estimators, it's high-tech technology in order to come to these results. But we also had to do some measurements, because these are typical acceleration measurements or strain measurements, which are not typically measured in the wind turbine by standard. And why is this important? We are in a new industry, and we still need to learn from what is happening in the field. There's a lot of uncertainty, and also the first designs were based on rules from oil and gas industry. And it's a total different application. Oil and gas, big, large structure, not moving a lot. The wind turbine is continuously moving around. You have interaction with the soil, you have interaction with the waves, for example, etc. And basically in the virtual environment, so in designing these structures and the foundations, for example, more than 6,000 load cases are applied in a virtual environment. For example, one of these load cases is an ultimate state, which is like the simulation of a 50-year storm event on that structure. And at the end, after a lot of calculations in the virtual environment in design, you get a parameter, which is damping, for example. And damping can be linked to how thick the steel would be of that foundation. And if you know these insights from the field, there is an opportunity to reduce steel. And steel is a big cost. It's 30% of the full wind turbine which is installed. And then, of course, people are interested. If we know that data and we can optimize it, then there's an added value in doing data sciences. So we had a match between technology and the market, which is nice, but then you also need 2 stupid guys who are willing to do this in 4 weeks and do the training, and also have a lot of work in the weekend time, because back then we didn't have any experience. None of us put a foot in the wind turbine before, and we had a limited time frame because they were going into the financial close of the project, so it was quite an urgent question. But yeah, we took the opportunity, because it's a challenge, but also an opportunity for us that we were allowed. Normally, they would not allow any tourists on the turbine. And at the end, we also won a poster award with the research we did, but I will explain that later. So we had, let's say, a difficulty between the lab, which we are used to, a very nice environment with warm temperatures, etc. But we also had to do in-field measurements, meaning installing more than 600 meters of cables and sensors within a limited time frame We had to do a training to go offshore. We had to make all our measurement equipment offshore proof that it would not fail, because you're there and you have one shot of a couple of hours to do these measurements. And you also need to be able to execute it in a good way, in a safe way. So we had to train ourselves, climbing on height, one of the trainings. We made, so this is the diameter of the turbine and all the cables. We had to train ourselves, meaning that we had a limited time frame and that we had to exactly know how long it would take to install one sensor on the different levels of the turbine. We also went to an offshore testing training center to have the safety training to go offshore. And then also you need all the tools and all equipment to do that, and that in a quite limited time frame. But it was quite nice to do, because in 2011 we did a measurement campaign. Actually, we were planned to do that on a Friday, but because of harsh weather, we had to work on a Saturday, which was also new for us. So the flexibility, we obtained a lot of operational intelligence with that as well. But at the end, that data was used for the Northwind wind farm, and they reduced costs by reducing steel of these large monopile foundations. And these monopile foundations are 70% in the market of offshore wind energy currently is using these monopile foundations. For us, this data was actually just an enabler, because the data wasn't there. We also had to do these measurements, but if somebody would have given us that data, we would just use that data and calculate the damping value. But in order to do that in a good way, you need process data in a clean way, and well, it wasn't there. So for us, it was just an enabler. If somebody would give that data to scientists, I think a lot of things can be done. So that's why facilitating good data quality is also important. At the end, the operators or the people we work with are interested in wisdom and decision support. So all the other things are enablers. Raw data in a database, the process data, they're not interested in these damping values. They want to know also the link with the physics. So the application knowledge combined with data science is important. So in our cases, most of the people work together, in mechanical engineer, for example, with a data scientist. As I said, hardware, visualization, for example, is not enough. What is your added value of the visualization? What are you visualizing, etc., etc. And for that, a collaboration, I think, between data scientists and certain application engineers is a win. On the other hand, you have the technology, but also the business point of view, the market point of view. You also have to see opportunities. You have to know what is going on in this world, what the drivers are, etc. And by doing so, we won a poster award, which was very nice for the researchers to continue their work. But we also get the opportunity to further conduct measurements continuously, because actually we did 2 measurements, which is a snapshot. But yeah, what there is changing, you have seasonal effects, and by doing so, we could do much more. And one of the things we gathered is that this damping value is actually changing over time, and this is also new for the industry. So it's facilitating a lot, and actually, beginning of 2017, we presented this 5-year data set and what is happening. And again, we won a poster award because actually the industry said, well, this is unique insights. So that's why sharing data or coming to a partnership with people is very important, because everybody can learn from that. And it's big data. Currently, there's more than 8 wind turbines equipped. It's 2 terabytes each month per turbine coming in. It's different kinds of data. It's meteo data. It's data from the turbine. It's our own data which we measure. And it's not really open data, as I said. We call it shared data. We try to open it up, but there's also a challenge there. Then we saw the opportunity to set up a company, and so one of the researchers who led the research, which is Gert, he set up this company called 24C, and actually they are now doing the similar things, setting up structural monitoring campaigns across Europe. And actually the added value is they gain insights in the lifetime of a wind turbine. The data can be used to optimize maintenance, to give input for new designs, and all these things can contribute to reducing the levelized cost of wind energy. And this is actually the added value of using this data. It's reducing the cost, and this is currently ongoing in the business. We see a very steep decline in levelized cost of energy for offshore wind, and this kind of research is contributing to that. It's not only 24C who we are supporting, there's many more companies within our chain who is using data. And we're trying to have a similar approach as we did with 24C as a unique case story, let's say. So if you have other opportunities or ideas, maybe through the hackathon, it might be an enabler. We're also now listed as a digital innovation hub here in Antwerp. And actually, there's two opportunities which I want to address. With respect to data, for example, soil data, I think a lot of companies are asking if any open data is available on soil, because the next big thing is on soil structure interaction, for example, or what kind of types of soil do we get? Because now offshore wind energy is picking up attention in France, for example, where you have other soil layers, but also in Taiwan, where you have other conditions after a typhoon or after an earthquake. Another thing, one of the park owners in which we work together with, they are willing to share data. So this is open data, but it's not time series data, it's inspection data. It's pictures which they are able to open up in order to look at automated recognition of coating failures or repairs or damages. Another thing which they are willing to open up is like a CAD model. It's like a drawing, a 3D drawing of a wind turbine foundation in order to come to automated flight path analysis. So just as two ideas, maybe to also keep in mind. So if you have any questions, talk to me later, and success with the hackathon.
Thanks. Then we have the final speaker, Pieter Jan, together with colleagues. And at the end, I will have a little bit more insights on how to apply about the roles, but now another success story.
Thanks. Not yet. Good afternoon, everyone. We're from Project Mahi. I'm Pieter Jan. This is Bertolt. This is Julien. So we'll be presenting our project called Mahi today. Let's see. So the reason why are we here? I said it before. It's interesting for us to present our project. To see if we can find some interesting partnerships and possible also some sponsors. So in the next 15 minutes, we'll present our project. We'll briefly talk about the technology and also present our view on future applications for autonomous vessels. So in the next few slides, Julien will present our project.
Thank you. So let me introduce Project Mahi to you. So what it's all about, the main objective of Project Mahi is to build an autonomous unmanned surface vehicle to cross the Atlantic Ocean. So why are we doing this? Because to our knowledge, no one has done it before. It will be the first time. So who's behind this project? We're a team of 4 engineers, 4 engineering friends. We met each other at KU Leuven during our studies. So Pieter Jan, Bertolt, and me, Julien, are present. Andreas couldn't make it today. Andreas has a master in energy engineering, and will focus on the energy and propulsion of our vessel. Bertolt has a master in electrical engineering and also a PhD, and he's an expert in embedded systems for the vessel. And Pieter Jan and I, we have both a master in aerospace engineering, and we will take the naval architecture, navigation, communication, and sensors to our account. So a little bit more about the route. So Project Mahi will start in France, in Les Sables d'Olonne, and we'll go to Guadeloupe in the Caribbean. So the first challenge of the vessel is to cross the heavy traffic lines from and to Western Europe. We have to avoid collisions, of course, and for that we have sophisticated algorithms based on an AIS system, but Bertolt will tell something more about that later in the presentation. When we have crossed the heavy traffic lines, we will go south towards the Azores before crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Going south is done for several reasons. The first one, we want to avoid floating debris in the North Atlantic gyre. Second, when we go south towards the equator, we reach the more sunnier parts of the ocean, which is good to charge our batteries because we will have solar panels on our boat. And last but not least, in the southern part of the ocean, waves, current and winds travel from east to the west, so which is good for our trip. We estimate that it will take about 80 days to complete the trip. Something more about data acquisition. We have some vessel data. So that's our location, our speed, heading, battery status, structural integrity. We'll upload all these data to our website together with sensor data. So it's atmospheric data, temperature, but also oceanographic data like phytoplankton activity, salinity, temperature, and so on. We upload it to our website where everyone can check it online, so it's on projectmahi.com. It's an interesting website also at this moment because we have also a crowdfunding page. So if you have a lot of money and don't know what to do about it, just give it to us, we know what to do about it. Then the timeline and some milestones. So it was Peter Jan who came up with the idea in 2015. So maybe we can build an autonomous boat and cross the Atlantic Ocean. I said, okay, yeah, that's a really good idea, but it should be unmanned. So, so in December of 2015, we started with the construction of a prototype. Why a prototype? Two main reasons. First one, we wanted to use composite materials, and we hadn't really much experience with it, so we wanted to test it in a prototype before making the final vessel. And we also wanted to test our first algorithms with GPS waypoint navigation. Okay, so we did some lake trials in September, and in November 2016 we had our first test on sea near Sable d'Olonne in France. And you can see a picture of the prototype. In January of this year we started with the construction of the final vessel, and in November of this year it will be ready, so we have 2 more months to start testing on a lake. Next year, at the beginning of next year, we will do some tests on sea with final tests in April, and we will launch in May. Why May? Because we want to be ahead of the hurricane season. That becomes quite difficult. Okay, and then I will give it to Bertolt.
Okay. Hello, I am Bertolt van den Berg. I am responsible for implementing the embedded system in this sea drone. So first I will talk a bit about the general technology where the boat is made of. So it's a composite vessel. It's made of basalt fibers, and they're made in the composite material using a bioepoxy, and the core is from polyethylene. And then to move the boat, we'll use an electric motor of 2 kilowatts we got from Torqeedo. Now actually this power is way too high. We will never use that because also we are limited in the amount of solar energy we can obtain, but this was just chosen because to have a good motor with a metal gearbox, we also typically came into this very high power range. And then to generate the energy, as I already said, we will use an array of solar panels that are installed on top of the boat. And also we will have 2 sets of battery packs for redundancy and also to have a higher capacity. And to connect the boat to the shore, we will use a satellite link. We are thinking both of using Iridium for very high reliability communication because they have a coverage of the whole ocean because they have a mesh network between their satellites. And then we'll use Globalstar for less important communication, for example, sending pictures, maybe even short videos because the traffic cost is much cheaper. But we cannot guarantee that we have coverage over the entire trajectory. And then of course for navigation, the primary thing we will use is GPS to know the position of the boat, but also we will augment this with a compass sensor and also accelerometer data to know the orientation of the boat. While this is useful for the navigation algorithms, is also data that can be used, for example, to estimate wave heights, wave frequency, etc. To avoid collisions with other boats, we are primarily looking at the automatic identification system, which sea-going vessels are required to be equipped with, which transmits their position, and we can use to know where they are and try to avoid to come into contact with them. And of course, navigation lights, because they are required. We will have them on our boat, but we cannot detect it from others. And then of course, there will be an autonomous system that will steer the boats towards the trajectory to hopefully arrive in the Caribbean. Yeah, then of course, we will also try to collect some data which is not really related to the boat itself, but it can be useful for other research. And first, we will have 2 types of sensors. One will be in the atmosphere, and the other ones will be underwater, because we are just at the interface, which is very useful to collect 2 types of measurements at the same time. So then the first things we will do is wind speed and direction, the air temperature and the air pressure, the CO2 concentration in the air, and the light intensity which we get from our solar panels. Then of course we will also put a camera to make some photos. It's probably not that useful, but it's very nice to have to show on the website. And the sensors we will have underwater are the temperature of the water, the salt concentration in the water, also underwater sounds, a CO2 concentration that is dissolved in the water, and also a camera underwater to check the state of the boat and see if there is some interesting things. And then we will upload this information also through our satellite link.
So in this last section, we'll briefly talk about the steps we've taken in the project so far, the challenges we've encountered, and then a future plan for a possible business. So the idea, it started in 2015, where we had the intention of building an autonomous boat with a group of friends, and of course to send it across the ocean while doing measurements. We brainstormed a lot during the first few months. We had crazy ideas on how the vessel should look like, what the timeline should be, how we would get funding for this project, and of course what the name would be. So basically we had to start from scratch, a blank page, and we had to build the project step by step. So after a few months of setting out a rough guideline and planning to get the project started, we were very enthusiastic about the project, so we wanted to find some funding with industry sponsors and other people. So we started writing lots of emails and sending them out, but unfortunately it does not work that well as we hoped for. We hope to be millionaires by this time already. But it goes a bit slower than that, so we had to, we noticed that we had to do something to make it more tangible. So Jules already explained that we will build a prototype, that we can make some videos, some pictures, and it's for people very attractive to see pictures and they can see the boat. So we started doing, started with the prototype on our own funding, but we also started a crowdfunding campaign on our website to get, let's say, some friends, family, and just generally enthusiasts involved in the project. So up till now, we reached almost 3,000 euros with our very, let's say, modest crowdfunding campaign. But we also, at the same time, we still send out emails because we can't help it. We need to send out emails to companies as well to get them interested in our project. And by this time, we already have a couple of sponsors as listed above me. That are behind the project. So next year in May we will launch our final vessel. The boat will hopefully cross the Atlantic Ocean and do some measurements at the same time. After that we are considering to start possibly a small company and see what we can do, because we know that there are lots of applications for these autonomous vessels. We just chose one of the applications for this project, which seemed to be interesting to us, because then we get to fly to Guadeloupe and drink some beers on the beach after we picked up the boat. So we see lots of applications, and that's the last slide I want to quickly show to you. Actually, we consider our vessel to be sort of a platform onto which we can put different sensors, different equipment to perform a range of different tasks. So the first one is Mahi the inspector. So basically we've just put a bunch of cameras and sensing devices onto the vessel, and it can be used to inspect remote or biosensitive locations. An idea would be also to put a drone on there and start to check out the offshore wind farms, as mentioned before. That's one of the applications. Then the surveyor, it can be equipped to survey and chart coastal waters. So this data can be used to optimize dredging activities. So there's a lot of interest as well from this angle to improve the activities. Also, basically an extension of our project is Mahi the oceanographer. We can put atmospheric and oceanographic sensors on there to remotely monitor our rivers, seas, and oceans, just to check the health of our environment. And then the last one is the transporter. We can, like a drone can fly packages from point A to point B, we can also do transport. So that was our presentation. I wish to thank everybody for their attention, also to thank our sponsors for their support, and of course the invitation from EMODnet that we can present our project here today. So, if there are any questions. Yes?
You've got an AIS on it, so, but you can also pick up the AIS from other boats. Do you take active measures to avoid collisions?
Yeah, that's the idea, but I'll pass on the mic to Bertolt.
Well, yes, that's the main point, because actually we don't have an AIS transmitter, because it's quite difficult legally, but still we can receive from the other ships and we can take evasive action.
Not like the American destroyer that crashed the other day. Okay.
We try to avoid the vessels.
What perks do we get when we give you money on the crowdfunding campaign?
We can think of very interesting, let's say, arrangements, but perhaps we talk about.
But I don't have a lot of money, but
yeah.
maybe you can tell it.
Perhaps the other guys, yes. But yeah, our project it's just the start of something. We can find, of course, some arrangements to
like
make
a speaker shouting your name all the time on the
yeah,
missions.
yeah.
But we have some nice rewards.
Yeah.
How long will the trip take, approximately, you think?
Julian, you mentioned it's approximately 80 days. It can be less, it's a conservative estimation, but the reason why we launch in May is just to be after the, let's say, the winter season in Europe and before the hurricane season in the Caribbean. So, but it will take more or less, it's quite a slow boat, but of course, if you want to do measurements, if you have high speed, it doesn't always work that well, so. Any questions left?
Thanks, guys. So, for me, the honor to finish off. We also thank the sponsors, European Commission for funding part of this project, and the VLIS, the Flemish Institute of Sea Technology, for making this possible, making this happen. So we have kicked off with the Open Sea Lab. So why apply and how to apply? So it's via the website, and important, we don't need an ID from you, we need your motivation. So we will select based on motivation. Also, the sooner the better, because full is full. You see the location, we cannot accommodate thousands of people here, no. We have in mind about 100, 110 people max, which is 4 or 5 per team, which makes 22 teams, more or less. It's really the maximum capacity. So we will be selecting based on your motivation and the skills, that we have a diverse set of skills. And the sooner you apply, the more chance you will have. So if you apply, you will be or in the competition directly, or you will be on the waiting list. But we will keep you informed about that. I thank you all for attending this event. Also thanks to the viewers who were watching remotely. And I would say apply now. Also spread the word in your networks. So keep the ball moving, and let's have a drink together. Thanks a lot.